Captain Thyra had spent 40 years mapping the empty spaces between stars. She had charted dead worlds and dying suns. She had documented gas giants and asteroid fields. In all that time, she had never found anything that made her hands shake. Until today. The survey ship Endless Horizon drifted through a region of space that most captains avoided. The spiral arm was too far from the core worlds. The stars here burned too hot or too cold. The radiation storms made scanning difficult. The Galactic Cartographic Guild had marked this entire sector as lifeless 3 centuries ago. No one had bothered to check again. Thyra was only here because of a bet. Her navigator had wagered that they could find at least one planet with liquid water in this forsaken corner of the galaxy. Thyra had accepted the challenge mostly out of boredom. 40 years of empty space did that to a person. The yellow star they approached was unremarkable in every way. Medium size. Stable output. 8 planets in orbit. Nothing special about any of them. Thyra was about to order the ship to move on when her sensor officer made a sound she had never heard before. It was something between a gasp and a scream. On the main display, data scrolled faster than Thyra could read. The 3rd planet from the star was lit up with readings that should have been impossible. Electromagnetic signals. Billions of them. Radio waves carrying patterns too complex to be natural. Heat signatures clustered in massive formations. Artificial satellites in orbit. And life signs. The computer counted them 3 times because the first 2 results seemed like errors. 7 billion individual life forms. 7 billion. Thyra stood frozen at her command station. Her crew had gone silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's engines and the steady beep of incoming data. The planet was blue and green and white. Oceans covered most of its surface. Clouds swirled in patterns that spoke of active weather systems. And on the dark side of the world, lights glittered like scattered jewels. Cities, thousands of them, connected by glowing lines that had to be transportation networks. Thyra found her voice. It came out as a whisper. She ordered a full spectrum analysis. She wanted everything. Every signal. Every reading. Every piece of data the ship could gather without moving closer. The results came in waves, each one more impossible than the last. The inhabitants called their world Earth. They called themselves humans. They had developed radio communication less than 200 years ago. They had split the atom less than a century ago. They had walked on their own moon just decades past. And they were completely alone. No other species had ever contacted them. No one had given them technology or guidance. Everything they had built themselves. Thyra's science officer approached her station with a tablet in his trembling hands. His face had gone pale. He showed her the calculations he had run 3 times to make sure. The humans had gone from simple farming to nuclear power in roughly 12,000 years. That number meant nothing to Thyra at first. Then she remembered her training. The galactic average for such development was 340,000 years. The fastest species on record had done it in 87,000. 12,000 years. It was absurd. It was terrifying. It was real. Thyra ordered an immediate report to the Galactic Assembly. A discovery of this magnitude required notification within hours. Protocol demanded it. But more than protocol drove her actions. She needed someone else to see this. She needed confirmation that she had not lost her mind. The Assembly's response came faster than she expected. Within minutes, priority channels opened across the sector. High counselors who had not spoken to each other in decades suddenly demanded joint briefings. Military commanders requested tactical assessments. Scientists begged for raw data access. And everyone, from the lowest clerk to the highest elder, wanted to see the images. Thyra authorized the broadcast. Let them see what she had found. The first clear images of Earth spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. 10,000 worlds received the feed simultaneously. Millions of beings watched as the blue planet rotated slowly in the void. They saw the city lights and the ocean currents and the satellites drifting in orbit. They saw a species that had clawed its way up from nothing in the blink of a cosmic eye. The reactions varied by species. The Valorians, Thura's own people, responded with academic excitement. A new species meant new knowledge, new perspectives, new discoveries. The merchant guilds immediately began calculating potential trade opportunities. The enlightened circles, those ancient philosophers who sought wisdom above all else, requested permission to study human culture and thought. But not everyone celebrated. The Kreth Dominion watched the broadcast in their fortress worlds at the galaxy's edge. They were old, the Kreth, old and powerful and paranoid. They had fought wars that lasted millennia. They had crushed threats that other species never knew existed. And they remembered. They remembered the last time a species rose too quickly. 200,000 years ago, a race called the Varaks had emerged from a world much like Earth. They too had advanced impossibly fast. They too had built wonders that defied explanation. And then they had turned those wonders into weapons. The war against the Varaks had killed trillions. It had burned whole star systems to ash. The Kreth had led the alliance that finally destroyed them, and the cost still haunted their collective memory. Now, watching the images from Earth, the Kreth High Council convened an emergency session. They did not see wonder when they looked at humanity. They saw a threat taking its first breaths. The Galactic Assembly ordered all vessels to maintain distance from the Sol system. Observation only. No contact. Not yet. A formal first contact delegation would be assembled and trained. Protocols would be followed. Everything would be done properly and carefully. Meanwhile, observation drones slipped into the system's outer reaches. They were small and silent and invisible to human technology. They watched and recorded and transmitted everything back to the waiting galaxy. What they showed confused everyone. The humans fought each other constantly. Wars raged across their world even now. Different nations pointed weapons at each other that could destroy cities in seconds. They divided themselves by invisible lines on maps and killed each other over resources and beliefs and ancient grudges. They polluted their own air and water. They drove other species on their world to extinction. By any rational measure, they should have destroyed themselves long ago. But they had not. Despite everything, they had not. And the drones captured something else. Something that made the observers pause and wonder. When disasters struck, the humans helped each other. Earthquakes and floods and storms brought enemies together to save strangers. When buildings collapsed, humans rushed into the rubble to pull out people they had never met. When one region suffered, others sent aid across those invisible lines. They built hospitals and schools and shelters. They created art and music and stories. They fell in love and raised children and dreamed of stars they might never reach. They were violent and kind, destructive and creative, selfish and generous. They were contradictions walking on two legs, and they did not seem to notice or care. Elder Scholar Morith of the Enlightened Circles spent 7 days reviewing the data. He was 900 years old and had studied more species than he could remember. None of them had prepared him for humanity. On the 8th day, he addressed the Galactic Assembly with findings that would echo through history. Humanity, he explained, had faced extinction multiple times. Ice ages had nearly frozen them. Plagues had nearly killed them all. They had invented weapons capable of ending their civilization and had pointed those weapons at each other for decades. Any one of these events should have stopped their advancement. Instead, Each crisis had accelerated it. The humans innovated fastest when they were dying. Necessity drove them forward with a desperate energy that other species could not match. Morath displayed his projections on the assembly's main screen. At their current rate of advancement, assuming they survived, humans would develop faster than light travel within 2 centuries. Perhaps less. They were already working on the theories. They were already reaching for the stars. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate contact to guide human development. Others called for quarantine. The Kreth representative said nothing. He simply watched with ancient eyes that had seen threats rise and fall across the ages. Thyra Valisin received orders to remain in the system as a permanent observer. She accepted without complaint. Part of her never wanted to leave. She spent her nights watching Earth, tunned below her hidden ship, and wondering what the humans dreamed of when they looked up at the stars. Did they know something was looking back? The galaxy had found humanity. Now it had to decide what to do about them. And somewhere on that blue and green world, a child looked up at the night sky and wished upon a star. She did not know that her wish was being recorded. She did not know that billions of beings were watching her world. She only knew that the universe was vast and beautiful and full of mystery. She smiled and made her wish and went inside for dinner. The galaxy held its breath and waited. The mathematicians worked without sleep. Across 100 worlds, the finest minds in the galaxy ran the same calculations over and over. They checked each other's work. They used different methods. They started from different assumptions. And every time, they reached the same impossible conclusion. Humanity's rate of advancement was not merely unusual. It was unprecedented in the entire recorded history of galactic civilization. High mathematician Varek of the Valorian Academy presented the findings to a packed assembly chamber. He was nervous, and he never got nervous. 60 years of presenting dry academic papers had cured him of stage fright long ago. But this was different. This data would change everything. The average species in the galaxy, Varek explained, took approximately 340,000 years to progress from basic agriculture to spaceflight. This was the standard model. Some species were faster, some slower, but the variations stayed within predictable ranges. The fastest confirmed development in history belonged to the Thesari, who had achieved spaceflight in 87,000 years. Scientists had studied that case for millennia, trying to understand how it was possible. Humanity had done it in 12,000 years. Perhaps less. The chamber fell silent. Delegates who had been whispering stopped mid-sentence. Even the Kreth representative, who maintained calculated indifference as a point of pride, leaned forward in his seat. Varek continued with trembling hands. The humans had not cheated. No one had given them technology. No one had accelerated their development. They had done everything alone, on a planet that actively tried to kill them. Their world was covered in predators. It shook with earthquakes and erupted with volcanoes. The climate shifted between ice ages and burning heat. Diseases swept across their populations regularly. By all logic, humanity should have died out thousands of years ago. Instead, they had conquered their world. And now they were reaching for others. Accusations flew across the chamber. Several delegates insisted the data must be falsified. Perhaps the survey ship's instruments had malfunctioned. Perhaps the humans were older than they appeared. Perhaps this was all some elaborate trick. The assembly ordered independent verification. 3 separate teams from 3 different species would journey to the Sol system and conduct their own analysis. No one would rely on a single source for data this important. The teams departed immediately. The galaxy watched their journey with nervous anticipation. While waiting for verification, scholars began studying the observation drone footage in detail. They wanted to understand how humanity had advanced so quickly. The answer they found disturbed them deeply. War. Humanity's primary driver was war. Every major technological leap in human history connected to conflict. They had invented better farming to feed larger armies. They had developed writing to coordinate military campaigns. They had created mathematics to calculate trajectories for weapons. They had built roads to move soldiers. They had discovered chemistry to make explosives. They had split the atom to build bombs. Even their peaceful technologies carried the fingerprints of violence. Their communication networks had begun as military systems. Their satellites had first served to spy on enemies. Their medical advances had come from treating battlefield wounds. War was the engine that drove human innovation forward at breakneck speed. Scholar Morth reviewed the historical records and felt something he rarely experienced: fear. Every species in the galaxy had fought wars at some point in their development. Conflict was a natural part of evolution, but most species developed past it relatively early. Once they achieved certain technological thresholds, war became too expensive. The potential for mutual destruction encouraged cooperation. Violence faded into history. Humanity had reached the point of mutual destruction. They had built weapons that could end their civilization in hours. And they had kept those weapons. They had pointed them at each other for decades. They had come within minutes of using them on multiple occasions. Any sane species would have disarmed. Any rational beings would have stepped back from the edge. The humans had not. They had lived on that edge for generations. They had raised children under the shadow of total annihilation. And somehow, they had not only survived, but continued advancing. What kind of species could function under such conditions? What kind of minds could carry that weight and still dream of reaching the stars? The verification teams returned within weeks. Their findings confirmed everything. If anything, the original estimates had been conservative. Humanity was advancing even faster than first calculated. New technologies emerged from Earth almost daily. The humans were racing toward the stars, whether the galaxy was ready for them or not. The Kreth Dominion demanded an emergency session. Their representative, a scarred old warrior named Tethkran, stood before the assembly with a datapad containing records that most delegates had never seen. He was about to share ancient history that his people had hoped to forget. 200,000 years ago, Tethkran began. Another species had risen with impossible speed. The Varax had seemed harmless at first, curious, friendly even. They had eagerly joined the Galactic community and traded ideas freely. They had advanced their technology by learning from everyone they met. Then they had turned. No one knew exactly why. Perhaps they had always planned to conquer. Perhaps something had changed them along the way. But within a single century, the Varax had launched a war of extermination against every species they had once called friend. The war had lasted 12,000 years. Trillions had died. Star systems had been sterilized. Species had been wiped from existence entirely. The Varax had invented weapons that the galaxy still refused to develop, even now. They had committed atrocities that made hardened warriors weep to remember. In the end, an alliance of all surviving species had destroyed them utterly. Not defeated, destroyed. Their homeworld had been reduced to ash. Their colonies had been eliminated. Every trace of their civilization had been erased. The galaxy had sworn to never let such a threat rise again. Tethkran looked around the chamber with eyes that had seen too much. The humans, he said, were advancing faster than the Varax ever had. Their capacity for violence exceeded anything the Varax had ever shown, and they had achieved this without any outside help at all. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted over each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded quarantine. Some called for immediate destruction. Others insisted this was paranoid overreaction. Ambassador Serena of the enlightened circles raised her voice above the chaos. She asked a simple question that silenced everyone. Had the assembly watched all the footage? Not just the wars and weapons. Had they seen how humans treated each other after disasters? Had they watched humans run into burning buildings to save strangers? Had they observed humans sharing food with enemies? Had they noticed the hospitals and schools and art? The humans were not Varax, Serena argued. Yes, they were violent. Yes, they were dangerous. But they were also something else. Something the Varax had never been. The humans cared about each other. They felt compassion for those outside their tribes. They helped those they had no reason to help. The Varax had been pure predators. They had shown kindness only as a tool for manipulation. But the humans seemed genuinely torn between their violent nature and their capacity for love. They fought against their own worst impulses constantly. Sometimes they lost, but sometimes they won. That internal struggle, Serena concluded, was what made humanity different. That was why they deserved a chance. The Kreth representative shook his head. He had heard similar arguments before the Varax War. Hope and compassion had cost the galaxy trillions of lives. He would not support gambling the future on wishful thinking. The assembly voted. The result was narrow, contested, and deeply controversial. Quarantine was rejected. Destruction was not even formally considered. Instead, the assembly authorized formal first contact according to established protocols. A delegation would approach Earth openly. They would offer trade and friendship and membership in the Galactic community. They would guide humanity toward peaceful development. But the assembly also authorized defensive preparations. Just in case, military forces would be quietly positioned near the Sol system. Early warning systems would be deployed. And humanity would be watched more closely than any species had ever been watched before. The delegation would be led by Ambassador Serena herself. She had argued most strongly for giving humanity a chance. Now she would bear responsibility for that choice. As she prepared for the journey that would define her career and perhaps the galaxy's future, Serena studied the human broadcasts that flooded from Earth. She watched their entertainment and news and art. She learned their languages and customs. And she noticed something that troubled her. The humans told stories about meeting alien life. Thousands of such stories. In books and films and games. They had imagined this moment for generations. In most of those stories, the aliens attacked first. Serena wondered if the humans were preparing themselves. If all those violent fantasies were actually training for the day when the sky would open and strangers would descend. The thought kept her awake at night. The delegation launched toward Earth with the eyes of a galaxy upon them. They carried gifts and promises of friendship. They broadcast peaceful greetings. The Galactic Assembly Chamber had never seen such chaos. Delegates who had worked together for centuries now screamed at each other across the ornate hall. Alliances that had held for millennia fractured in hours. The question of what to do about humanity had divided the galaxy more deeply than any issue in living memory. Tefkrin of the Kreth Dominion stood at the center of the storm. His faction had grown in the weeks since the verification teams confirmed humanity's impossible advancement. Fear was a powerful recruitment tool, and the old warrior knew how to use it. The Kreth proposal was simple. Surround the Sol system with a containment field. Let no human ships leave. Let no human signals escape. Quarantine them until the galaxy could determine whether they posed a threat. If they developed peacefully, the field could be lowered in a few centuries. If they turned violent like the Varax, the field would ensure they could harm only themselves. Ambassador Serena opposed the plan with everything she had. A containment field would be detected eventually. The humans would know they had been caged. What kind of first impression would that make? What kind of relationship could grow from such distrust? The Enlightened Circle supported Serena. They argued that contact and guidance would shape humanity's development in positive ways. An isolated species would grow bitter and suspicious. A welcomed species would learn cooperation and peace. The choice was obvious. The merchant guilds cared little for philosophy. They saw profit in humanity's rapid innovation. A species that advanced so quickly would produce valuable technologies. Trade agreements would benefit everyone. Quarantine meant lost opportunities. But the military coalition listened to Kreth warnings. They reviewed the human warfare footage with professional eyes and grew very quiet. Other species fought for territory or resources or ideology. Humans fought for all those reasons and more. They invented new reasons to fight constantly, and they were terrifyingly good at it. A Valorian admiral presented her analysis to the coalition. Human military tactics, she explained, showed a creativity that bordered on madness. They used deception and misdirection in ways that violated every principle of honorable combat. They attacked supply lines instead of armies. They struck at night when their enemies slept. They used terrain and weather as weapons. They even turned their own deaths into strategic advantages, fighting to the last soldier to buy time or make points. Most disturbing of all, they had developed these tactics against each other. Every human military strategy had been tested and refined in the fire of human conflict. They had spent thousands of years learning how to kill intelligent beings effectively. No other species in the galaxy had such experience. The Admiral's conclusion was grim. If humanity ever turned hostile, they would be unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced. Not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they understood violence in ways that peaceful species simply could not match. Tethkren seized on this analysis. The galaxy had grown soft, he declared. Centuries of peace had made them forget what war truly meant. The Kreth remembered. They had paid in blood for the lessons that others ignored. Ambassador Serena countered with emotional appeals. She showed footage of human parents caring for children. She displayed human art and music. She read translations of human poetry about love and loss and hope. These were not monsters, she insisted. These were beings with souls and dreams and the capacity for greatness. But Tethkren had his own footage. He showed wars and massacres and cruelties that made delegates turn away in horror. He played recordings of human leaders threatening to destroy each other with nuclear fire. He presented statistics on human violence that seemed impossible for a sapient species. The debate raged for days. Neither side gained ground. The vote hung in balance, swaying with each new argument and counterargument. Then something unexpected happened. A junior analyst from the observation team requested permission to address the assembly. Such requests were usually denied, but the presiding elder was curious. He granted the request. The analyst was young and nervous. Her name was Verre, and she had spent months studying human communications. She had not focused on military transmissions or political broadcasts. Instead, she had analyzed something far more revealing. Human stories. The humans, Virae explained, told stories about everything. They imagined countless futures and explored them through fiction. They created characters who faced impossible choices and showed how those choices shaped destinies. Their stories revealed their deepest fears and highest hopes. And they told many stories about meeting alien life. Virae had categorized these stories by outcome. In some, peaceful contact led to cooperation and shared prosperity. In others, alien invasion led to human resistance and eventual victory. In still others, humanity itself became the invader, spreading across the galaxy by force. But the most interesting category was the stories where humanity faced judgment. In these tales, alien observers evaluated humanity and found them wanting. The humans were too violent, too selfish, too dangerous. The aliens decided to destroy or quarantine or subjugate them for the good of the galaxy. In almost every one of these stories, Virai noted, humanity proved the aliens wrong. They showed courage and compassion when tested. They rose above their violent nature when it mattered most. They earned their place among the stars through deeds rather than words. The stories revealed what humanity hoped to be. Not what they were, perhaps, but what they aspired to become. And that aspiration, Virai argued, was worth encouraging. Tethkren dismissed the analysis as naive. Stories were fantasies. Reality was what mattered. And the reality was that humanity had more weapons than they could use and a history written in blood. But Virai's presentation had shifted something in the chamber. Many delegates had never considered that humanity might be aware of their own flaws, that they might be fighting against their darker nature, that they might be hoping for a chance to prove themselves. The final vote came after 7 days of debate. The result was closer than anyone expected. Quarantine was rejected by a margin of less than 50 votes out of thousands cast. The Kreth Dominion recorded formal opposition. Several military powers abstained, but the majority held. Formal first contact would proceed according to established protocols. Ambassador Serena would lead the delegation. They would approach openly, offering friendship and trade and membership in the Galactic community. Humanity would be given a chance to join the peaceful civilization of the stars. But the vote came with conditions. Military forces would position themselves near the Sol system, hidden from human detection. Early warning systems would monitor human development constantly. Any sign of aggressive expansion would trigger immediate response. Humanity would be watched more closely than any species in history. And if they failed the galaxy's test, if they proved to be the next Varax, the response would be swift and final. Ambassador Serena accepted these conditions without complaint. She understood the fears that drove them. She even shared some of those fears privately. But she believed in giving humanity a chance. She had to believe. The delegation assembled over the following weeks. Serena selected her team carefully. Linguists who had mastered human languages. Diplomats who had studied human psychology. Scientists who could answer questions about galactic technology. And warriors hidden among the staff just in case. Before departure, Serena visited Elder Morath one final time. The old scholar had been quiet throughout the debates. He had offered no opinion on what should be done, but his analysis of human development had started everything. She asked him what he truly believed. Were the humans going to be friends or enemies? Morath was silent for a long time. Then he spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. Humanity, he said, was a contradiction that should not exist. They combined traits that were supposed to be mutually exclusive. They were predators with empathy, warriors with conscience, destroyers who loved. No species in his centuries of study had balanced such opposing forces. He did not know what they would become. Perhaps they did not know themselves. But he believed they were worth understanding, if only because the galaxy might learn something important from watching their struggle. Whether that lesson would be inspiration or warning, only time would tell. Serena thanked him and boarded her ship. The delegation launched toward Earth with hope and fear in equal measure. Behind them, the Kreth warships took their positions in the dark. Ahead, a blue planet waited unknowing for visitors that would change everything. And on that blue planet, in a room filled with screens and nervous officials, a decision was being made. The approaching ships had been detected. Not clearly, not certainly, but detected. Something was coming. The leaders of Earth looked at each other across old divisions and older hatreds. They had spent generations threatening to destroy each other. Now something from outside was approaching, and suddenly those internal conflicts seemed very small. For the first time in human history, the whole species began preparing for a meeting with something that was not human. They hoped for friends. They prepared for enemies. And they waited with the same mixture of hope and fear that fear. The delegation ship entered the Sol system, broadcasting peace on every frequency. Mathematical sequences pulsed outward in prime numbers. Universal symbols of friendship glowed from the hull. Ambassador Serena had ensured that no reasonable observer could mistake their intentions. She stood on the bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger. After months of preparation and years of debate, the moment had finally arrived. First contact with humanity. The event that would define her career and perhaps the galaxy's future. The human response came faster than anyone expected. Within minutes of the first broadcast, signals erupted from Earth. Not chaos or panic, but coordination. Government channels activated across the planet. Military forces shifted to alert status. Communication networks that normally competed suddenly began sharing information. Old enemies opened direct lines to each other. Serena's communications officer reported the findings with poorly hidden amazement. The humans had prepared for this. They had plans in place. They had practiced these protocols. Despite having no confirmation that alien life existed, they had made themselves ready. The Galactic broadcast showed everything to billions of viewers. They watched Earth respond to first contact with a discipline that seemed impossible for such a young species. No major power broke ranks. No nation tried to make separate contact for advantage. They faced the unknown together. Many viewers expected panic. Stories of alien contact often featured screaming crowds and fleeing civilians. But the humans simply prepared. They activated emergency systems designed for natural disasters. They gathered in community centers and watched news broadcasts. They made phone calls to loved ones. Some prayed. Some celebrated. But very few ran. A formal human delegation assembled within hours. Representatives from every major power joined together in an unprecedented display of unity. They established a single communication channel and broadcast their own greeting. It was simple and direct. Welcome to Earth. We come in peace. We hope you do as well. Serena ordered the approach to continue. The delegation ship took position in orbit where human satellites could observe them clearly. She wanted no secrets, no hidden movements. Transparency would build trust. The first face-to-face meeting took place via video transmission. Technical limitations prevented physical contact immediately, but visual communication was possible. Serena appeared on screens across Earth, and human representatives appeared on her bridge. She had studied humans for months. She had watched their broadcasts and learned their languages and analyzed their psychology. But seeing them directly still surprised her. They were so expressive. Their faces moved constantly, revealing emotions that most species kept hidden. Fear and hope and curiosity played across their features in ways that made them easy to read. They were also smaller than she expected. Fragile-looking, soft. Yet when the human leader spoke, his voice carried authority that transcended physical presence. He welcomed the delegation on behalf of humanity. He expressed hope for peaceful relations. He asked questions about the galaxy and its inhabitants. And those questions troubled Serena. They were not the questions she had expected. A primitive species meeting advanced aliens should have asked about technology and wonders. They should have sought miracles and solutions to their problems. Instead, the humans asked about politics, about military structures, about historical conflicts, about power dynamics among galactic species. They were assessing the situation. calculating threats, looking for advantages and vulnerabilities. Even as they smiled and expressed peace, they were preparing for the possibility of war. Serena answered carefully. She described the Galactic Assembly as a cooperative body that maintained peace through mutual benefit. She explained the trade networks that connected thousands of worlds. She offered humanity membership in this community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. The human leader listened with an expression she could not quite read. Then he asked a question that echoed across the watching galaxy. What happened to species that did not join peacefully? Serena hesitated. It was a reasonable question with uncomfortable answers. Some species had refused membership. Some had been hostile. The results had varied, but they were rarely good for the refusing party. She chose her words with care. The galactic community valued peace, she explained. It preferred cooperation, but it also protected itself. Species that threatened the stability of galactic civilization had historically been contained. The human leader nodded slowly. He seemed unsurprised. Perhaps he had already guessed the answer. The negotiations continued for days. Serena offered technology and medical advances and access to galactic markets. The humans expressed interest but made no commitments. They wanted time to consider. They wanted to study the offer. They wanted to understand the galaxy before joining it. This was not normal. Most contacted species embraced membership eagerly. The benefits were obvious and immediate. Delay seemed irrational, but the humans were not irrational. They were cautious. They had survived by being careful, by never trusting easily, by always keeping options open. Millennia of betrayal and conflict had taught them that offers too good to be true usually were. Serena found herself respecting this caution, even as it frustrated her. The live broadcasts showed the galaxy something unexpected about humanity. The humans were not awed by their visitors. They were interested, curious, even excited. But they were not overwhelmed. They treated the aliens as equals rather than superiors. This surprised many viewers. A species that had just learned it was not alone in the universe should have been humbled. They should have felt small and primitive. Instead, the humans seemed to grow larger somehow, more confident, as if the confirmation of galactic civilization had validated rather than diminished them. Elder Marth watched from his study and smiled for the first time in months. He understood what others did not. The humans had always believed they would reach the stars. They had told themselves stories about it for generations. Now those stories were coming true. Of course, they were not humbled. They had been preparing for this moment their entire existence. On the 7th day of negotiations, a human diplomat named Chun spoke privately with Serena. She had been impressed by his calm demeanor and shocked questions throughout the discussions. He seemed to understand galactic politics better than she expected. Chun asked her directly what the galaxy truly thought of humanity. Not the diplomatic version. The truth. Serena considered lying. Diplomacy often required careful omissions. But something about Chun's directness demanded honesty. She told him about the debates, about the fear, about the Krath and their warnings, about the military ships hiding in the outer system. Chun nodded as if he had already known. Perhaps he had suspected. Humans were remarkably good at reading deception, she had learned. Some of them seemed almost psychic in their ability to sense hidden agendas. Then Chun said something that haunted Serena long afterward. We have been alone a long time. We learned to survive without help. We built everything we have through struggle and sacrifice. We would like friends. We would welcome trade and cooperation. But we do not need them. We have never needed anyone but ourselves. He was not threatening. His tone remained calm and matter-of-fact. But the message was clear. Humanity would not be intimidated. They would not be rushed. They would make their own choices on their own timeline. And if the galaxy decided to treat them as enemies instead of friends, they would face that challenge as they had faced every other challenge in their history. By fighting, by adapting, by refusing to surrender no matter the odds. Serena transmitted her private report to the assembly that night. She described the negotiations in detail. She analyzed human psychology and behavior. She offered her recommendations for how to proceed. But she also included a warning that she knew would disturb many readers. The humans looked at us the way we look at them, she wrote. Like we might be the threat. They are studying us as carefully as we study them. They are calculating our strengths and weaknesses. They are preparing for possibilities we would prefer not to imagine. We came to guide a primitive species toward galactic civilization. Instead, we have found something else entirely. Something that does not need guidance. Something that has survived and thrived without any help at all. I do not know if they will be friends or enemies. I do not know if they will be friends or enemies, but I know with certainty that they will never be followers. Whatever relationship we build with humanity will be between equals or it will not exist at all. The galaxy received her report with mixed reactions. Some praised her insight. Others accused her of being manipulated by human charm. The Kreth noted that her warnings confirmed their worst fears. And on Earth, the humans continued their careful analysis. They accepted some offers and declined others. They asked for more time. They built new telescopes to study the galaxy they had just learned they belonged to. They also built other things, quietly, in hidden facilities. Just in case. The galaxy watched and waited. And humanity smiled and negotiated and prepared for whatever came next. Neither side trusted the other completely, but both sides hoped that trust might grow. First contact was complete. The real test was about to begin. 5 years had passed since first contact. The galaxy had watched humanity with constant attention throughout. Observation drones still circled Earth. Analysts still studied every human transmission. And the Kreth warships still waited in the outer darkness, patient as stones. Ambassador Serena had remained on Earth as the permanent galactic representative. She had grown to know humanity better than any alien before her. She had attended their festivals and studied their history and walked their cities. She had made friends among them, or as close to friends as her position allowed. The humans had changed in those 5 years, and yet remained exactly the same. They still fought among themselves. Wars still flickered across the planet's surface, smaller now, but never entirely absent. They still colluded and competed and struggled with their darker impulses. All the flaws that had alarmed the galaxy remained visible, but they had also changed. Global cooperation had increased dramatically. The knowledge that they were not alone had softened some divisions. Old enemies found common ground in shared humanity. Resources once devoted to mutual destruction shifted slowly towards shared advancement. And they had learned. Everything the galaxy offered, they absorbed with frightening speed. Technologies that took other species centuries to master, humans adapted within years. They asked endless questions. They experimented constantly. They pushed boundaries that wiser species left untouched. The formal induction ceremony approached. After 5 years of evaluation and negotiation, humanity would officially join the Galactic Collective. They would have a seat in the assembly. They would participate in galactic trade. They would be recognized as citizens of the greater civilization. Many celebrated this achievement. The enlightened circle saw it as validation of their faith in human potential. The merchant guilds anticipated profitable partnerships. Even some military officers had come to appreciate human creativity and resilience. But the Kreth Dominion had not changed its position. If anything, 5 years of observation had deepened their concerns. They had watched humanity learn and grow and adapt. They had calculated where current trends would lead. And they did not like the answers. Tethkren was no longer the Kreth representative. He had died of old age 2 years past. But his successor, a younger warrior named Vethra, carried his warnings forward. She had been raised on stories of the Varax War. She remembered what unchecked expansion could cost. The induction ceremony was scheduled for the 10th anniversary of First Contact. Representatives from across the galaxy would gather to formally welcome humanity. It should have been a celebration. Instead, it became a confrontation. The Kreth arrived uninvited. Not diplomats, but warships. A full battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, weapons charged, shields raised. They broadcast no greeting. They made no explanation. They simply appeared and waited. The galaxy watched in shock. This was not how civilized species behaved. The assembly demanded explanation. Emergency channels flooded with confused communications. Vethra finally responded. Her message was broadcast to everyone simultaneously. She demanded that humanity submit to immediate security inspections. Kreth forces would search every human facility for hidden weapons. Every human ship would be examined. Every military installation would be evaluated. Only after the Kreth were satisfied that humanity posed no threat would they be allowed to join the collective. Otherwise, Vethra concluded, the Kreth would take appropriate measures to protect galactic civilization. The threat was clear. Submit or be destroyed. The assembly erupted in chaos. This was unprecedented. No species had ever threatened another on the eve of induction. Some demanded the Kreth withdraw immediately. Others secretly sympathized with their concerns. No one knew what to do. On Earth, the human governments convened emergency sessions. Military forces shifted to high alert. The planet that had spent 5 years preparing for peaceful membership now prepared for war. Ambassador Serena rushed to the Human Leadership Council. She begged them to remain calm. She promised to resolve the situation through diplomacy. She swore that the collective would not allow this aggression. The human representative, a woman named Director Okafor, listened to Serena with an expression of sad patience. She appreciated the ambassador's efforts. She understood the galaxy's position. But she also understood something that Serena did not. This moment was inevitable. Humanity had known it would come. Perhaps not when or how, but they had always known. Director Okafor activated a communication channel. Her face appeared on screens across the Sol system and throughout the galaxy. She addressed the Kreth directly. Her voice was calm. Her words were measured. But their meaning shook the foundations of galactic politics. We hope to join as friends, she said. We spent 5 years learning your ways and sharing our own. We accepted your observation and answered your questions and opened ourselves to your judgment. We did everything right. But we also prepared. We always prepare. That is how we survive. Director Okafor gave a signal. Something happened throughout the Sol system. Ships emerged from hidden positions. Defense platforms powered up around Earth and Mars and the asteroid belt. Weapon systems that no galactic species had ever seen activated with terrible efficiency. The humans had not spent 5 years only learning. They had spent 5 years building. The Kreth fleet sensors went wild. The readings made no sense. The technology did not match any known profile. Power signatures exceeded anything the Kreth had expected from a species this young. Director Okafor continued speaking as the galaxy watched in stunned silence. We have fought each other for 10,000 years. Every weapon you now see, we built to kill ourselves. Every tactic we know, we learned through mutual slaughter. You are not more frightening than we are. We have already faced the worst enemy we will ever know. We have looked in the mirror and survived. We do not want war. We never wanted war. But we have never shied from it when war came to us. You threaten our world. You threaten our children. You demand we bow before you have earned respect. We will not bow. The standoff lasted 3 hours. 3 hours during which the galaxy held its breath and waited for annihilation. Then the Kreth withdrew. No shots were fired. No lives were lost. But everything had changed. The induction ceremony proceeded the following day, though the atmosphere was very different from what had been planned. Humanity took its seat in the assembly, not as grateful supplicants, but as proven equals. They had faced the galaxy's most feared military power and refused to flinch. After the ceremony, Serena found Director Okafor standing alone on a balcony overlooking the assembly grounds. The human leader looked tired. The weight of what she had done showed in every line of her face. Serena asked why they had revealed their strength. They could have hidden it longer. They could have continued playing the role of humble newcomers. Director Okafor smiled sadly. It was not a happy expression. Because we are tired of being alone, she said. We want peace. We want friends. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves. But we learned long ago that peace only lasts when everyone knows the cost of breaking it. We showed our teeth so we never have to use them. She turned to face Serena directly. We are not the Varax. We do not want to conquer or destroy. But we will not be conquered or destroyed either. If the galaxy can accept that, we will be the best friends you have ever had. We will share everything we learn and fight beside you against any threat. We will bring creativity and passion and determination that you cannot imagine. But if you cannot accept us as equals, if you try to control or contain or eliminate us, we will resist. We will fight. And we will never, ever surrender. Serena believed her. She had spent 5 years learning to read human expressions. She saw no deception in Director Okafor's eyes. Only exhaustion and hope and steel. The galaxy adjusted to its new members slowly. Some species remained wary. The Kreth retreated to their fortress worlds and nursed their humiliation. Old suspicions did not vanish overnight. But humanity proved as good as their word. They shared their innovations freely. They joined peacekeeping missions with enthusiasm. They helped species that had never shown them kindness. They seemed determined to earn through deeds what they could not gain through diplomacy alone. And Elder Morath watched from his study with tears in his ancient eyes. He had lived 9 centuries. He had seen species rise and fall. He studied civilizations that no longer existed. He had never seen anything like humanity. They were everything the galaxy had feared. Violent, unpredictable, dangerous beyond measure. But they were also everything the galaxy had forgotten it could be. Passionate, creative, alive in ways that older species had lost long ago. He wrote his final analysis that night. It would be read across the collective for generations to come. Humanity, he wrote, is not what we feared. They are what we forgot we used to be. Before we grew wise and careful and safe. Before we lost the fire that drove us to the stars. They remind us of our own distant past, when we too were young and fierce and burning with possibility. They will change us. They will challenge us. They will force us to question everything we believe. And we will be better for it. Not because they are gentle, but because they refuse to be anything less than exactly what they are.